And I'm going to read a short story that I read a couple of months ago, and I did read this out at last month's Poems and Pints, so apologies to those of you, Dave and Jackie, I think, who were there.
Really good.
It didn't have a title last month, so I was sort of casting around for a title, and I read one of Mark Drudinnick's poems called Frost, and had a beautiful line, "The Black Night Long," and I asked his permission, and he said that he would be delighted if I titled my story "The Black Night Long." So this is for Mark. "I'm going to eat the moon," he said. "One day soon, when I'm hungry, I'm going to reach up and pull it down from the sky and eat every last bit of it." And she believed him, because she believed that he could do anything. "Will you tell me when?" she asked. He nodded and put his arm around her as she shivered. "And the nights will be as dark as the inside of my mouth, forever and ever, and everyone will ask where it's gone, but we'll know. Just us, we'll know." She wasn't sure she wanted the nights to be forever dark, but she did want to know what the moon tasted like, and she knew he'd tell her, every last detail. He might even let her try a piece, if she was extra nice to him and kept his side of the room tidy. The mother came into the bedroom and shooed them both down from the windowsill. But she wasn't cross, and she kissed the girl as she tucked her in. The boy declined his own kiss. He wasn't a baby anymore. The mother laughed and gave the girl his, and the girl went to sleep full up and smiling with the pleasure of her double share. The next night, the girl clambered to kneel on the windowsill at bedtime, wriggled her toes into the age-softened lining of the curtain, and squashed her nose against the window pane, twisting her face from side to side to catch the condensation and a glimpse of the moon. When she heard her brother creak the floorboards behind her, she shuffled around so that she could push her head through the curtain's gap. "It's still there," she said. He smiled and patted his stomach. "That's because I'm not hungry tonight. I sneaked an extra couple of potatoes when Mum was in the kitchen." He scooped her up and swung her onto the bed, landing her with a low screech into her nest of pillows. She knew he was using her like a spaceship, imagining her as one of the model rockets that hung from the ceiling, but she didn't mind. The night after that, the girl didn't need to go to the window to see the moon. It was already in the room, poured as thick as buttercream icing on the rug. "Oh, good," the boy said. "It's nearly full. If I wait just a couple more days, there'll be more of it to eat. I might even save you a bit." He pulled the curtains closed, but the moon crept through the worn cloth and scattered across the girl's bed. It slithered inside her ears and tangled in her eyelashes, and she dreamt dreams that were starshot and bumpy. When she woke the next morning, tears had hardened like pearls in her cheeks. Now she wanted to ask her brother not to eat the moon. There was still a little part of her that wanted to know what it tasted like, but she knew she'd miss it if it wasn't there. She watched the sun chase shadows around the house and wondered whether she could ask him to have just one bite and leave the rest in the sky. But once he'd pulled it down in through the window, he might not be able to throw it back. Then he'd have to eat it all anyway to get rid of the evidence, because nobody could ever know what he'd done. The next evening, the girl gave the boy her helping of treacle pudding with custard, and only cried a little bit while she watched him slowly eating it. The evening after that, she nudged one of her sausages onto his plate and tipped most of her gravy after it, and he winked at her and told the table that he thought he was probably too full now for anything else tonight. She smiled then as she nibbled on a broccoli and pretended that she liked it best of all the things on her plate. But the next night, when the moon was straining to balance its swollenness amongst the stars, close enough for even her to reach up and pull it down, her brother didn't want her helping of shepherd's pie. He said he wasn't that hungry, right now. She went to bed with Mr. Grizzle's oversized head clutched tight to her throat, and a single glass eye cool against her collarbone. The boy left the curtains wide open, so that the moonlight made the room shine like one of their mother's old black and white photographs. The girl shivered in her sleep. The bedroom was darker than the inside of her brother's mouth when she woke. There was something crouched by the window. She could hear it breathing, chewing, just beyond her feet. Her toes started to tingle and curl. She scrambled up to the safety of her pillows and whispered her brother's name. There was silence, except for that steady munch, munch, and the occasional stifled burp. She whispered again. His voice came to her thick and muffled. I couldn't help myself. I woke up and I was hungry. She leaned over to switch on the lamp beside her bed, knocking Mr. Grizzles to the floor. Her brother reared up into the sharp, sudden light, his palms full of the moon and his mouth smeared with it. It dripped from his chin and left shiny trails across the front of his pyjamas. He held his hands out to her. "Try some. It's not as tasty as I imagined." The girl screamed. She stared at her brother and past him, at the flat, relentless black at the window. The lamp flickered as if in warning, and she thought its light too would go out. She screamed again and heard sounds from her mother at the other end of the hall. The boy clutched his stomach and bent forward. He groaned. His face, when he looked up, was green-tinged and glistening, lit up from inside. He winced at his sister and held a finger to his lips. "Don't tell," then ran from the room. The next night, the moon was back in the sky, and the girl's mother, when she tucked her into bed, pointed at it and told her about eclipses. The girl nodded and watched the thin, faraway sliver darting from cloud to cloud. Her brother smirked but didn't dare say anything. He was in trouble for raiding the larder. Once they were alone, the boy looked across at his sister. "We don't care what she thinks, do we? You know I ate the moon. And I wouldn't have spat it back out either if it hadn't given me such a bad stomachache." He turned over and closed his eyes. The girl got out of bed and went to the window. She stared up at the sky. "What does it taste like?" she asked. The boy grunted and rolled onto his back. He grinned. "Cream cheese," he said. The girl smiled and got back into bed. That was exactly what she thought it would taste like. Thank you.